So I've been using the Sony 24-105 f4 as my main camera lens for a little bit over 6 years now. I've used it for professional travel photography projects, for fine art prints, for a lot of personal work, in all sorts of conditions and environments and locations all over the place. And in this video, we're going to dive into my thoughts on it, what I like, what I don't like as much. I'll show you a bunch of example photos that I've taken with it over the years. And then we're going to talk about whether I'd still buy it and whether I'd still recommend it in 2024. But spoiler alert, I probably would. It's a really good lens. Let's get into it. So this lens is kind of boring, but I also kind of love it. So for my style of travel photography, I am pretty reactive to the scene that's there. I'm not like a commercial lifestyle photographer where I'm setting up a scene and bringing in models and lighting and whatever. And I know, oh, this is going to be a 35mm shot. I can use a prime lens and we're going to be working on this for a while. I'm shooting more of a documentary style photography where I'm reacting quickly and I want to be able to zoom in and out and not be constantly putting down my camera bag and swapping on a different prime lens. And for most of the kinds of travel photography that I do, I like a zoom lens for that reason. And I really like the extended focal length range that I get with the 24-105 as opposed to like a 24-70 or something else. So for most of the time, this lens starts on my camera and it generally stays on my camera unless I need something a little bit more extreme. So if I need a longer focal length or a wider focal length or a faster lens or something, then I'll swap to something else. But most of the time, this is more than good enough for most situations that I find myself in. Okay, let's talk about image quality. Overall, really impressed. Generally with a zoom lens like this, especially with an extended range of 24-105, I feel like you have to expect to make some compromises. And if you were to take the exact same shot with this versus like a G Master Prime lens at the same focal length and showed them side by side, you could probably tell slight differences if you zoomed all the way in, but I've never really found issues with the photos that I get from this from an image quality perspective. They're always plenty sharp, contrasty, the colors look great. I'm really happy with it. Like most of my portfolio was shot with this lens and either this or an older camera, and they all look great. Like they're sharp enough and the colors look good and like the image quality is great. I recently spent a week on assignment for a local tourism board for the San Juan Islands here, and I shot most of the week with this lens. Pretty much any time that I didn't need something longer for wildlife photography, and there was like one case where I was shooting a view out of the tent and I wanted to show the tent as well, and I couldn't back up anymore because I was inside the tent, so I needed my 16-35 for that. But for pretty much everything else, I used the 24-105 and the images looked great. I'll share some on the screen here if I'm not already, and the client was really happy with them. So purely from an image quality standpoint, I really don't feel like I'm lacking with this. Again, you can always find a sharper lens. Like this isn't going to compare with like a Zeiss Otis prime lens or whatever the absolute sharpest lenses out there are, but it also doesn't need to because it's like more than good enough. I don't ever think about the sharpness or really anything else on the image quality front with this lens. So build quality, I've been really impressed. I don't know what material it is. There's some plastic, I guess, plastic metal combination. But like I said, I've used this for a little over 6 years now and pretty like rough and tumble with it. I don't really baby my gear and it barely looks used at all. There's like the tiniest of like scuffs if you look really closely, but it honestly barely looks like a used lens. And I've just kind of had it dangling from a Peak Design clip for like hundreds of miles of hiking, and I just throw it in the top of my backpack sometimes if I'm backpacking. Like I don't really think about the fact that like this is a expensive fragile lens because it doesn't feel fragile at all. And yeah, no scratches. Generally the build quality feels really good. There's a rubber gasket here for weather sealing, and that seems to have worked really well. I've had this in just absolute downpours for long periods of time, shooting in the rainforest or whatever, and it's held up really well. The only problems have been with the camera body where some water gets into the hot shoe area and I get error messages, but I've never gotten water inside the lens or noticeable dust inside the lens or anything like that. So pretty impressed with the build quality, and the features in general are nice. It's got the function button here, which honestly I kind of forgot about until right now. But if you want to customize that button to do various functions, like any of the other custom buttons on a Sony camera, you can do that. And I will probably do that. Like I said, I kind of forgot that was there. There's an autofocus, manual focus switch, and a image stabilizer, or optical steady shot, as Sony calls it. So switches for both of those. I like having the optical steady shot switch right there, so that if I'm doing a long exposure on a tripod, like multiple seconds, then I switch that off, and works pretty well. No dedicated aperture ring like a lot of the G Master lenses have, but that doesn't bother me. I'm used to it, I've used it for so long, but even on my lenses that do have a dedicated aperture ring, I usually just leave it on auto and control it from the camera, so no issues there. It feels like a good size to me. I mean, it's bigger than a lot of my other lenses, but it's also a zoom lens. They tend to be bigger than my prime lenses. But even so, like it feels balanced, you know, on an A7R4 like this, it doesn't feel front heavy. And I can, like, if I don't have the lens hood on, I can fit this, even with the lens cap, in a 3-liter Peak Design sling, which is a really small bag. And you can't really fit anything else in there, maybe a memory card or maybe another battery. But like, it's a fairly compact package for what you're getting. 24 all the way to 105 in a package like this, plenty small. Feels good, yeah, it feels balanced. Like, I think the general theme with this is it's kind of a boring lens, and I don't have to ever think about it. You know, it doesn't feel like a big lens. I don't get tired of carrying it. I don't think about the image quality. I don't think about the focal length range. Like, I'm rarely thinking about it at all, which is kind of nice. Yeah, it's a good one just to have on your camera. Another thing that I never think about is autofocus. It does a good enough job. Like, maybe if I were doing video and needed to have super intense tracking, or I don't know, wildlife photography with a zoom lens like this, which I guess you could do, maybe I would have different opinions, but I don't ever think about it. Like, it's the autofocus, it works fine. I never miss focus. And if there's a situation where I have to make sure I get focus, I take a few shots. And then if one is out of focus, then I have another one. But I don't really find myself missing focus with it. It's good autofocus, it's quick, it's quiet, no issues there. So I think the main trade-off that you're making by going with a 24 to 105 f4 lens, I think Canon maybe just recently came out with a 24 to 105 f2.8, which sounds pretty cool, except that it's pretty big, and I wouldn't want to carry that big of a lens around. So for most people, and for Sony, at least for now, it's really a question of a 24 to 70 2.8 or a 24 to 105 f4. Of course, there are other options, but for a lot of people, those are what they consider. And then it's a trade-off between the extra focal length or the extra stop of light that you get with the faster aperture. And for me, I really like the longer focal length. So for me, that's a big plus. I'm shooting at the 105 end of the lens all the time. And I rarely feel in most situations that f4 isn't enough. I rarely feel like I need to go from f4 to f2.8. If f4 isn't enough, then f2.8 is only one stop faster. And my prime lenses are about up to two stops faster than f2.8, so 3 stops faster than this. And so if I need faster than f4, I have better options in the prime lenses. If you only want one lens, then maybe that's nice, but like I said, it's only one stop faster. With the high ISO capabilities of these modern cameras, it's not a big deal to shoot at f4 and then ISO 1600 or 3200 or whatever you need to, or you throw it on a tripod. So it's a trade-off, and for me, I will happily take the trade-off between having one stop slower of a lens, but getting the extra focal length reach that I get from 70 to 105 here. One other nice bonus that I found with this is that it seems to focus pretty close to a subject. I don't know the technical specs offhand for it, but there's lots of times where I'm out in the field and I see a small detail that I want to take a picture of pretty close. Maybe it's driftwood and rocks or a fern or plants or flowers or something, and I want to get pretty close, not macro close. It's not a macro lens, it doesn't pretend to be, but I can get details and focus pretty close and have a fairly good magnification, and it just kind of works. I don't remember the last time that I tried to take a photo and I couldn't because it wouldn't focus close enough. So for my needs, that's great. Again, I'm not doing macro photography, and if I was, I would need a macro lens, but it works great for those just kind of small, detailed punch-in scenes that help tell the full story in a travel project. Like I said, this is on my camera most of the time. I don't know, 80, 90% of the time. I don't know how to exactly quantify that, but most of the time. And it's there until I need something else. So for wildlife photography, I'm generally going to use a longer lens, typically my 100 to 400. And then occasionally, like for interiors or very occasionally for like a waterfall, I'll need something wider than 24. So I'll do my 16 to 35, or I'll stitch kind of a panorama together if I don't bring that, because I don't use my 16 to 35 very often. So if I'm backpacking, I'm not going to bother bringing it. Or occasionally I will use a prime lens. So if I'm doing street photography or just walking around a city all day with my camera, it's nice to have a smaller, lighter lens. It's a little bit less obvious that I have a big professional camera with me. And prime lenses are kind of fun, so sometimes I just want to use them. But every other time, this is on my camera, and it generally just stays there, and I don't really have to think about it. So yeah, slightly boring, jack of all trades lens that does more than good enough at pretty much everything. Would I still buy this today? Like if I lost all of my gear, I was still me and still kind of at the stage that I'm at with my photography and still doing some professional work and licensing photos and all of that, does this still feel like a good enough lens? And would I re-buy this if I were starting from scratch? And also, like, would I recommend this to other people? And I would say yes, probably. I would recommend this to pretty much everyone. I would probably buy it again if I lost all my gear. I am intrigued by the Sony 24 to 70 G Master Mark II. It seems like a fantastic lens and a pretty good weight. It's super expensive though, and I do think that I would miss the 70 to 105 range in there. So I would probably buy this again and then just supplement it with primes and longer and wider lenses like I have now. But for most people, I think this is a great lens. I think if you're looking for a general zoom lens, this is hard to go wrong with this. If you're looking for a first lens, I think this is fantastic, and use it for a while and then just see which extremes you bump up against. If you find yourself shooting at 105 all the time and you wish you could zoom in a little bit more, then maybe you supplement it with a 100 to 400 or 70 to 200 or something else. If you find yourself wanting to go wider than 24 a lot, then you get a wider lens, 12 to 24 or 16 to 35 or something else. If you find yourself constantly wanting a faster aperture, then supplement it with a faster prime, or maybe you find that the 24 to 70 f2.8 is the right lens for you. But for most people, I think this is gonna really work well for them in most cases. Fantastic lens, kind of boring, but does the job, gets out of the way. Don't really have to think about it. If you have any questions about any of that, let me know down in the comments below or shoot me an email. And with that, I'm gonna go pack. I've got a 9-day photo road trip coming up to the north side of Vancouver Island. Haven't been up there. And I think there will be a couple videos coming from that trip. So hopefully all goes well then. And if so, I will see you guys in those videos. And either way, see you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support, and I'll talk to you later.